Welcome again to my channel. In this video, I'm going to show you what is Python functions. Probably the first question that comes into your mind is, why do we need function at the first place? So, as a programmer, you would be required to write thousands of lines of code to make a program. And that's not easy to maintain. To make it maintainable, you split your program into chunks of codes, which we call it function. So a function normally helps you to make your code more maintainable and reusable. How would you define function in Python? It's quite easy. Let's see. Just define the keyword def, which stands for definition, and then your function name, and then a parenthesis and semicolon. The same naming practice that you use for naming variables, keep that for function too. Normally, you write your function with small letters, and if it's a combination of two or more words, then try to separate them using underscore. And then as you press enter, you see that the cursor is not going to the end. This is because Python uses indentation as a syntax. In comparison to other programming languages like Java, C++, where you have this small curly bracket, in Python it is removed, and then you have this indentation. Let's print something in this function. And remember, whatever you write from here, it's inside this greet user function. Print hello user. As you can see in here, I use the keyword print. Print is also a function and whatever you pass inside this little information, it's called argument. We'll come into that in a moment. Let's print another message from inside this function as well. This is from Python function. Now, to run this code, you have to have a starting point. To do so in Python, there is a special way. You define a special variable called name and then assign the value name to it, and then colon. As soon as you do that, you would get this little arrow indicating the starting point of your program, calling the function. So how would you call the function? It's pretty straightforward. Just write the name of the function with this little parenthesis, greet user, and that's it. You declared a function and then you called a function. If you run this program, this greet user will run this chunk of code. Let's do that. See here, we get this hello user, and this is from Python function. You can run this as many times as you want, and there's no problem. A little chunk of code would run every time the program gets to these functions. See? That's why we use function. Now think of it that you have a lot of information here, and you just call it and you want to print those information or do some calculation. You can do a lot of that only inside this function, and then take this function and use it in multiple programs. What is function arguments? The information that you pass inside this parenthesis is called function arguments or parameters. Well, there is a debate which one to call argument and which one to call parameters. Normally, what you write in here, it's called argument. For example, if I say greet user name, and then instead of just user, I would pass name. Let's give it a space here, and then I would call the name the greet user function, and then it requires this parameter. Normally, this is called argument. What you write inside parentheses during declaration of the function, and what you give to the function later when you call the function, that's called parameters, which is the data value. let's say in this case him, and you can say greet user Ahmed. So if you run this program, the program calls this function, takes this value, which is a string value, and then combines it with this hello word, and then calls this line of the code, and then come back to this next line, and then again come back to this line, and then pass this value to this name, and then call this, and then call this line, and then come back to this line, pass this value to this name argument, combine it with this line, and then print this line, and that's how it works. Let's run this program. See, hello Kim, this is from Python function. So we have 3 functions called. That's why we get this 2 messages 3 times. Number of arguments. By default, when you declare a function and then you specify a number of arguments, you are required to give those exact parameters to each argument. Let's say, for example, I would say this is first name, argument 1, and this is last name as an argument 2. And then I would like to print last name, not first name, and then combine it with another string, hello last name, first name. Well, this little operator combines 2 strings. Just put a space between them. So you just write this little bit space, and this combine this space with the last name, and then combine this first name space. If I call this function and give it only 1 parameter, it will give me an error. Let's run this. See, greet user missing 1 required positional argument, last name. The way you define your function, the number of arguments that you define in your function, you must pass the exact number of parameters. Let's write another one, and then in this case I'm going to give it 3 parameters rather than 2. Say Kim, then last name is something like, say I will give it, assuming that this user is 18 years old. So if you run this, the first line, this line gets run, but the second line, because we give it 3 parameters for 2 arguments, it cannot run. Greet user takes 2 positional arguments, but 3 were given. So you have to be specific when you write the number of arguments, and you must pass the same number of parameters. Alright, so key value arguments. To make your code more maintainable, you can also pass arguments using the key value format. To do that, just come to just call your function, in this case greet user, and then give the exact name of your parameter as your argument. As I write down there, you can see that it gives me the name of the argument, and then specify the first name. For example, in this case, let's say Emil, and then comma, then last name, and then give the last name, let's say Jorish. So it doesn't do much, it just makes your code more readable, and that's called keyword argument. You have your keys in here, and there's a value in here which is actually assigned to this keys, and then you give this keys to this line, and then you put this value. Let's run this program, and it runs problem. is default parameter in Python? Default parameter basically when you declare your function, or when you define your function, you assign some value to the argument which can be used as a default value. Of course, you can override those value if you want to. For example, if I just say first name is always, let's say Mike, and then last name is, say, so the value that you pass during the function declaration, this value is called default argument. And now, since this function has a default argument, when you call this function even without passing any value to this function, it will take this value and print it out. Let's do that. With user, and I'm not gonna pass anything in here because it can get this default argument. See, Josh, Mike. And you can of course override this argument by using the key arguments. For example, if I want to change the first name only, I'll just say, going back to a previous example, say Emil, and then I'll just keep the last name because I want to show you that you can override it. So in here I override only the first name, while in here I want to override last name in the second example. So this is the second call to the function, and then I just say, let's say him. Run this program, you'll get first Mike is overridden by Emil, and then the last name Josh in the second example, second call of the function, is overridden by the value of key. That's it for the default argument. You can specify default arguments and then use it. Normally, remember that function does two things. Either it performs a task and that's it, or it returns a value. It performs a task and then returns a value. The second one, to return a value, to do some calculation and then get that and then do some other thing on it, you can do that by using the keyword return. For example, if I just want to get this value into a message, and this is called formatting. If you pass this if in with a string and then use this curly braces inside the string, you can get the value of the string, and I want to return this value. Well, let's get rid of this one, comment this out, then return message. Now let's print this. So I will get the message here and then say greet you. Well, if we see here, we have this default value, so we want to just get the default value, or we can pass a keyword argument to get the message and then print the message here. See, I got the message and then I print it. This looks a little bit of redundant. You can make it more comprehensive by just using the print and then passing this function, because this greet user passes a value, which is a message in here, and then temporarily store it into a variable. We can't see it, it's there, and then the print function gets that value and prints it out to the screen. Let's run this. Same result. Let's say I just use this inside the print function and then still I want to run that. What will I get? I want to print this and then I want to see, do I really get something? Well, let's see. If I just write this and I don't have anything, so let's comment this out. What you can see in here, after printing the message, I get this none printed as well. So what is this none? None is a Python object, and by default, if the function does not return anything, it returns the none value. That's it. There is another separate video about the none, so check out that video as well. Alright, so you can pass a list into your function. Let's get rid of these, and then I'll just change this to some new function, totally new thing. Let's say div display food, and then I want to pass food in here, and to pass a list and then display each items of this list inside this function. To do so, I assume that this food argument is a list, and therefore I write my code in accordance to my assumption. And to display items from a list, check out the list video as well to know more about Python list. You normally use for loop. You say for, let's say, and then since it's a list, I would just give it foods for food and foods, and then print food as like this. If I call this function, I'll just write its name and then pass a list. Let's say I would have a list of apple, banana, and orange. Then if you run this function, what it does, it gets this lists as a parameter and runs this for loop and then print each item from this list. You can see that in comparison with other programming language, I haven't defined the type of this foods argument in here. Although it may cause some confusion when you first start with Python, but the fact it makes it a lot easy. Let's run this program and see the result. Yes, very simple, isn't it? Pass a list into the function and you returned the name of items from the list. The pass keyword in Python. The pass keyword in functions or in general in Python is a keyword that is just there. It doesn't do anything. For example, you have some function you want to declare and then you want to you think like, okay, I will write the content of this function later on, the body of this function. I'll come to that. So what you can do, we'll just write the pass keyword. If I just write this function and I don't give it anything, and let's say this is a complete code, then it gives me this little error. You see, here we have this error, or in here you see this small kind of broken line is actually an indication of error. To get rid of that, to make this program, the rest of the program to run, just pass this, you just write this pass keyword. It does nothing. If I just call this function, it literally does nothing. A list of foods, although it's not a list, but I'm just passing an argument. And you see, it does nothing. Gives you the possibility to write a function without any body. Alright, and I just want to write about multiple arguments. So sometimes you would need to write multiple arguments. The function is not limited on 2 or 3 arguments. Add a lot of arguments into your function. For example, if I have a function, let's say multiply, and I want to multiply x, y, and let's say the multiplication of xy is basically x multiplied by y. That's it. I want to return this value, then by 2 numbers, function, let's say 4, and if I print this, you get the product of 3 and 4. Now, let's say I want to pass 5 as well. Sometimes I would need to pass 6 as well. Sometimes you would need to pass, let's say 10. Multiply all these numbers and using only one function. Well, of course, you can do, let's say x equal to 1, then give it some default value, y equals to 1, and xyz equal to 1, say a equals to 1, b equals to 1, c equals to 1, because multiplying any number to 1 is not affecting the result. And then you just multiply all this number. You can do this, multiplied by a, multiplied by b, multiplied by c, multiplied by, yep, that's it. So you can do this. You can even pass 3 numbers or 2 number or even 1 number, and you'll get a correct result. But let's say you have more than the number of arguments that you have. How would you do that in Python and make it more Pythonic, like very simple? For that, we'll have this something called asterisk args, which I have another video on it. Please check that out. Asterisk args, and then you want to pass multiple, similar way you want to pass multiple keyword arguments, and for that in Python we have something called double asterisk keywords. So there is a separate video about these two. It's also part of function tutorial, but I want to keep it separate to deep dive into it because these keywords are normally used in programming a lot. So check out those videos as well. And that's it for function. Check out this little task. I give you a little task on the screen and then pause the video and see whether you can solve it or not. Probably there is a function or not. Maybe the function is used in here, or maybe the function is not gonna give those hints. So let me see whether you can solve it or not. If you solve it, write it down in the comment section. I will come and check it, and also you can check the solution in this video as well. Alright, so this is a short program called Guess the Number. Give it a thought and write a program to do this job. Here is my solution. If you have any comment or question, please write it down in the comment section below this video. I'll come to check it and definitely reply to your comments. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that hit button. Thank you and see you in the next video. Stay tuned.